Hey, what's going on there, folks? Welcome back here to a Thursday night. It is the Earthmaster out here, about 10:30 p.m. here, California time, May 9th, 2024. It's definitely going to be an interesting night this time. This time tomorrow night, we should be seeing some awesome auroras out here. We'll get into that right now. Latest activity, though, on the Earthquake 3D globe shows a 2.5. And we'll watch for some bigger earthquake activity coming up here as well with the arrival of this large CME. Now, this is quite the impressive event that they're putting out far as the watch they're issuing. Them, meaning the Space Weather Prediction Center, has issued a first G4 class storm, G4 watch, since 2005. Goodness. So that's been definitely a while. Who knows? This could turn into maybe something bigger, maybe a G5. You just never know if conditions are right. They are talking about tomorrow night, early Saturday morning. The earliest it can arrive in terms of the 5 Earth-directed coronal mass ejections that have been produced here is maybe midday Friday, but let's hope not, because we want it to be dark here across the North American side. But this could persist through Sunday. As stated here, this is an unusual event to see this many CMEs arriving all at once. Only 3 severe geomagnetic storms have been observed during the solar cycle, which began back in December 2019. The last G4 was March 23rd, 2024, and the last G5 was, you guys remember the Halloween storms there back in October 2003? That G5 storm resulted in power outages in Sweden and damaged power transformers in South Africa. So, yeah, this is definitely an event to watch, that's for sure. And they are kind of talking about being able to see this down into, well, Northern California and potentially as far south as Alabama. Let's show you guys the latest view line here. Now, this is an experimental version from the Space Weather Prediction Center for tomorrow night with a forecasted KP index of 8. Now, this could come in stronger. You never know. But either way, they have mentioned it in their wording that we could see it down here into Northern California. And, you know, Alabama's a ways down there. So I'm going to be out here tomorrow seeing what I can see. I got a decent northern horizon view. And I'm not really around any big cities. So if you want to be able to see this across these rare lower areas here in the States, you got to get away from the bigger city out in the country somewhere and have a nice clear view of the northern horizon. But either way, if you're up into Montana, North Dakota, Minnesota, Washington area, it's going to be quite a show above your head. And, you know, that view line above your head is going to be reaching down into portions of Oregon, Idaho, Wyoming, Nebraska area. That's going to be stuff that's right over your head. And again, this is a view line that they're stating, but I think, you know, it should be a little bit further south here because their view line is not matching what they stated in their wording. So this is going to be an interesting event. The specific arrival of this activity now is going to be, looks like Kevin has updated this, KP index of 8 there in the purple. Brunt of it looks like it starts to come in between 0 and 0600 UTC time. Now, that's not going to be 0 to 6 in the morning. Right now, the current UTC time is 0530, May 10th. So roughly this time tomorrow, in between this time, we're almost at 0600 right now. So anytime between 4 and 5 o'clock in the afternoon, early evening, throughout the night tomorrow. Peak intensity should be between 6 and 12. Now, that could be anywhere from, at least my time, 11 to 6 in the morning. So it looks like it's going to be a decent time frame for us here on the North American side of the Earth to see this potential rare G4 class storm. Goodness. So it's definitely an event to watch. There has been numerous CMEs that have been produced The Halloween storms here, I was just kind of looking up that, and it was a pretty decent G5 class storm. We'll check out what took place in earthquake activity during that event in a little bit, but I want to cover let's go over here to the electric power community dashboard and show you guys these CMEs that have popped off here from the sun recently. There's been a series of them. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or so. There's probably about a total of 5. That's quite rare to see that many large CMEs headed in the Earth-directed view here. Almost a bullseye shot from those series of very strong CMEs there. I believe there's 5 in there. Earth in the green. All these are going to be coming up together as a huge cannibal CME. And things could get interesting here tomorrow night. Fairly high up here on the plasma density, quite elevated up here, and also the speed at which this is coming in is going to be quite the shock there to the Earth's magnetic field as well. So we'll watch this tomorrow. We'll cover it in the morning as well in terms of any updated time frames or whatnot. But don't miss out if you're able to. It's going to be Friday night. Maybe you don't have to work this weekend. Stay up if you can. I'm going to be out observing this. If it's pending, it's not 3 in the morning. I don't plan on staying up at 3 o'clock in the morning. But yeah, so definitely keep an eye on this. Again, Northern California. Let's see here. Should a prolonged period of severe G4 storming take place, locations even far south as Texas and California could see aurora on the horizon once dark outside. Don't miss it. All right, we definitely got to keep an eye on that. And what do we got for flaring activity? Let's look here and see what the current flare level is. We haven't really seen anything since our last long duration X flare here earlier today. Looks like we're just crackling here with some M flares, but don't let your guard down, because this sunspot is still very capable of producing some very large flares. Look at this. This is a monster out here on the southwestern quadrant of the sun. Quite the complexity of colors in here. This thing has not died down much at all, and that does harbor some potential for some very strong X flares. Now, of course, this is the source of these recent CMEs that are headed our way to hopefully produce this significant. I don't want to say hopefully, because this is pretty much a bullseye shot coming in here with these CMEs. So we'll definitely have to watch that. And earthquake activity, right? I've been leaning more towards the impacts of huge proton events and large CMEs that impact the Earth's magnetic field that could kick up earthquake activity around the planet. I pulled up, just for fun here, back in 2003, the Halloween storms, right? There was a series of large flares and similar CMEs that were produced that arrived on the planet to create a G5 class storm. And so I pulled up that time frame. And October 30th, we did see a 7-pointer out here in the Japan area. So things were somewhat elevated. We didn't see any 8-pointers, but definitely looks like there was some elevated activity out here during that time. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in terms of the space weather relationship and the impacts that take place in terms of elevated earthquake activity. It just kind of makes sense, right? It's a large plasma cloud headed this way, high density, high speed. The Earth's magnetic field tends to take that little crunch and obviously reflect it, but at the same time there, it does seem to kick up earthquake activity out here across the planet. It's a theory, right? Like anything else here, but this is gonna be a big test. Don't want to miss this. As far as earthquake activity right now, these X flares that have been produced, we didn't really see any proton events from them, so we didn't really get any, bombardment with the charged protons that sometimes are sent out. But let me double check, make sure everything's good. I'm recording. Okay. Kind of crazy last night. So we haven't really seen any elevated earthquake activity just from the flares themselves. So we've seen a lot. I don't know how many X flares we've seen. We've seen 6 or so in the last few days, and numerous M flares, right? So it doesn't look like there's a relationship between flaring and earthquake activity. Obviously, we should have seen something by now if that was the case, right? But it's going to be more of a test with the arrival of these massive CMEs and multiple ones headed at us that could trigger elevated earthquake activity over here on this beautiful planet that we live in the next couple days. So we'll continue to watch that. I will be monitoring it pretty closely. Of course, the live stream will be up 24/7. Far as anything major going on here on the planet, though, for earthquake activity, there's not a lot. Just a typical amount of earthquakes. Looking at the map here, we got 249 earthquakes across the planet, but I'm sure there's way more. This is just what the USGS monitors locally for the states and the U.S. territories, and they'll normally do 4.0 and above international out here, or 4.5. Sometimes they'll throw in a 2-pointer down in New Zealand for some reason, but anyway. So earthquake activity, very common. This is the EMSC model that shows some of the activity around the Mediterranean as well. Really not seeing anything elevated out here. This is very typical. See 2s and 3s. Some movement outside of Turkey up here as well. It looks like a 4-pointer. 4.5 here across the northern edge of the Himalayas. Taiwan has been seeing a little bit of uptick. We'll have to watch this, right? Because that's been a source of some big-time swarming, big-time earthquake activity here recently with really, the main quake struck last month, early in April, and that was a 7-pointer. I can't remember the exact magnitude, but we've seen some aftershock activity following that 7-pointer, and then some calmness. And then about a week or two later, a series of large events, not up into the 7 range, but in the 5s and 6s and many 4s in a big-time earthquake swarm fashion stirred up out here with really no main quake within that swarming that kicked up. So we'll have to watch this, for maybe see what happens tomorrow, because we're starting to get some earthquake activity ramping back up out here in the 4 and 5 range. But aside from that, there's, typical movement out here. Let's look at California and see what we got. Some minimal movement off the San Andreas Fault. The San Jacinto Fault Zone, fairly quiet out here. Really not a whole lot going on across that fault system. There was a 2.7 out here in the Joshua Tree area in the southern end of the San Bernardino Mountains, and just off the San Andreas Fault here, the southern branch. So a little bit of movement, but really nothing big. Still waiting on that one, right? Many generations of us have been waiting on the big one out there in Southern California. Been hearing it passed down through generations, it seems like. Oh, eventually that's going to take place. We're talking about an 8.1 earthquake out there across that plate boundary, which will happen. It's inevitable, and it will not, it's going to happen. Question is when. Northern California, typical movement up here. Really not seeing anything major going on. Mount St. Helens, a slight amount of earthquake activity here in the last 24. Looks like about 5 or 6 earthquakes. Very small. Nothing compared to what we had seen here last year. We've seen a decent amount of earthquake activity stir up here for a couple months, well underneath the area when that swarm was ongoing. So that indicated there a little bit of magma recharging the reservoirs down there, or the whole system. But really nothing of major concern right now. Let me check out the tremor map here tonight and see what we got. 130 epicenters in Northern California. This is not volcanic tremor, but tremor associated with the Cascadia subduction zone that sits just offshore here. That is another sleeping giant and very capable of producing at least a 9-pointer. So, yeah, it's been 324 years, counting, that that it's seen a full rupture out here. Obviously, this area, could go tonight. It could go in the next 100 years. It just never know. So just best be prepared out here. So that's a tremor down into the subduction zone, about 35, 45 kilometers into the subduction zone area below the region that gets locked. The locked area is just offshore here. And we know that's a locked area because this area is rising in terms of GPS displacement. So when the big one does hit, this area is going to drop, along with many other bad scenarios. We've covered that a lot here in many videos on this channel. Let's see the rest of the world out here. One earthquake way up north into the Spitsbergen fracture zone. We're just off of that, looks like a little 4.2 from earlier this afternoon. We'll check out the Iceland activity because the eruption has halted there across this area, and we got to watch earthquake activity. It looks like we're getting a little bit of movement out here. Let's go to the all magnitudes and see what we got. There's about 82 earthquakes or so out here, mainly in the region where we've seen our last ongoing month and a half, 2 month long eruption there, northeast of Hagefell. That's where the earthquake activity right now is situated at, but we've seen it here in the last couple days or so further down south here around the Grindavik area, which is that little community out here. So just something we have to watch. I don't think this is enough earthquake activity that would qualify for almost an immediate eruption. When it does get ready to erupt again, it could be anywhere. They've even mentioned south of Hagefell, which could put this area in the hazard zone. So we'll continue to watch that. Hawaii, another one out here as far as Kilauea Volcano goes. Still seeing some earthquake activity out here. It looks a little bit less, though, than what we've seen in the recent past. Let's check out the latest update here from the folks there at the USGS Volcano site. Check 1, 2. All right, we're working. Update put out today. It looks like the volcano is currently not erupting, and earthquake counts remain elevated with approximately 190 earthquakes in the past 24 hours. That is a slight decrease over the preceding day. These earthquakes are clustered in the Upper East Rift Zone as well as south of the Caldera region. So fairly deep still, somewhat, 1.2 to 3.1 kilometers or miles below the surface. Ground deformation out here, that's a good indicator of what's going on, right? As far as magma movement, magma displacement, magma pressurization. Taking a little downturn here in the last day. But overall, if you look at the last 30 days or so of activity, it does show, this stair-stepping event followed up by a little bit of stationary or maybe even deflationary activity. But it's coming and going, it's recharging, it's getting there. And I believe we are at our highest level observed here across the summit region since 2018, since that 2018 eruption here. So things are getting elevated. That's a different area. This is the summit region right here. Notice that just really taking off, heading up there. Looks like we're above that level previously reached there before the large displacement of magma from the summit off to the southwest rift zone. That's a huge drop right here. So we're matching that now. Just a matter of time. Far as any weather outlooks go, things are going to start calming down out here after tomorrow. Here's the remainder of the outlook. It looks like here overnight, still got chances of some severe weather out there with wind and hail threats. Tomorrow for Friday, it's hard to say. Let's look at cloud cover, see what we got here for tomorrow's potential aurora outlook, right? So we could use many different models here. I'm just going to use the windy model, just get a quick view of it, see what we got. This is 10 p.m. my time. So if we look at 10 p.m. my time tomorrow or so, Friday night, a lot of the country out here has some clear skies. Look at that. In areas that there's expected to see the overhead auroras there in northern Montana, North Dakota, Minnesota, Washington area. Northern California, clear skies as well. Kansas, Nebraska, probably going to see it as well. Colorado, looks like you guys got some cloud cover around 10 p.m. or so. A little bit further into the morning, down there, it does look like that's going to be an area of concern for cloud cover and blockage from the auroras. But goodness, look at that. there's a decent chance of many population out there, lots of folks that may be able to see the auroras out there if they have a clear sky. I don't think you're going to see it in the city skies, city night skies. I mean, you can barely make out a couple stars, right? So you got to get out of the city and get out in the country where you can have a decent chance of viewing the auroras. I will be out there tomorrow, just outside my home here in Northern California, seeing what I could see. And we'll watch for that. Obviously, when the CME arrives, we'll see things really shoot up as far as the KP index. And again, we're expecting up around the 8. And that's what they're forecasting. It could be even higher. You just never know. We could have some issues with power grids and whatnot. It's very possible. Their wording on this here shows that there could be issues when a G4 class storm occurs with radio, high frequency radio, satellite navigation systems could be degraded. Low frequency as well. Auroras have been seen as low as Alabama and Northern California. That's for a G4 class storm that we're expecting tomorrow. Spacecraft, we really don't have to worry about that because we're not out in space. Power systems, possible widespread voltage control problems, and some protective systems will mistakenly trip out key assets from the grid. But I think the power operators and whatnot are going to be prepared for this and watching and monitoring all the data that comes in, and of course their main job that they have to do to watch everything else. So we'll watch this, folks, and see what happens here for tomorrow. It's going to be an interesting one for sure, as far as not only being able to see the auroras decently low, but also the effects of what we could see here in terms of earthquake activity ramping up following the arrival of multiple strong CMEs. All right, I'm out of here, folks. I need a little bit of sleep here. Pretty busy day. I'm sure we got another busy day here tomorrow. We'll catch you guys back out here in the morning. Friday morning update. Friday. Goodness, we made it through the work week here. So we'll catch you guys back out here in the morning. Have a good one.